In this video, we'll explore and start with the premise: everything is good, everything is bad. So first of all, we have to establish good for what, bad for what, because it's all relative, right? It may be bad for us to go out of business, but it's good for our competitors, for example, right? So you have to establish a reference point. And so everything is good, everything is bad from the perspective of our sustainable well-being, our ability to feel sustainably better and avoid feeling chronically worse. And that's the ultimate reference point because it's the single goal that links every human being throughout the history and future of humanity. Everyone wants to feel better and wants to avoid feeling worse. Now, in that context, first of all, everything is not good. And everything is not bad, right? Now that we've established a context, there are some things that are not good. And to give a sense of why that's important, imagine for a moment that the planet is wiped free of all mammals, all species over the next year in a nuclear holocaust, right? That literally, whether it's a meteorite hitting the world similar to a dinosaur disaster, or whether it's, World War III nuclear war, but at the end of it, there are basically no mammals and very few plants and lots of pollution and blah, blah, blah. Now, fast forward 5 billion years, fast forward 10 billion years, right? There will be a whole set of life forms on this planet, some of them adapting to radiation, meaning they're feeding on the energy that is present. So 5 billion, 10 billion years from now, after completely having everything wiped out, there is an almost certainty that there will be unique, complex life forms, similar to mammals in many ways, that would not have existed without this, quote, catastrophe. Now, if you look from their perspective, looking back, right? In other words, do we think it's a tragedy that the dinosaurs were wiped out, I think, 60 million years ago, something like that? Do we look at that and say, oh, what a shame, right? It's a pity that we exist. That's only 60 million. We're not even talking billions of years, right? So our existence today, everything we see around us, is resting on the foundation of the destruction of the dinosaurs, that meteorite. So if we step out into the largest terms, everything is good, everything is bad. If we can take any point of view that we want in any point of time, right? There is a point of view looking from one point in time to another point of time. Like we can look through our point of view at this point in time, and we can look back at the dinosaur tragedy and say, this is the best thing that's ever happened. If it wasn't for the dinosaurs being wiped out, we would never have had a chance, right? We would have started to develop maybe some mammalian things, maybe would have made it as far as chimps, and then we'd have been eaten, right? Our brains would be too traumatized from constant Tyrannosaurus rex raids to develop the empathic brain, I mean, that's what makes us human, is empathy. And it's tough to develop empathy in severe sociopathic conditions of helplessness, right? If you look at the cruelest faces of humanity, if you look at the areas where the reptilian brain is present on the planet today, they are areas in which there is helplessness and cruelty, and that if you open your human brain, your empathic brain, you are overwhelmed with so much pain that you can't function. And so you close it down again instinctively and become reptilian. You become sociopathic. You dissociate from all that pain to survive, right? So what we call the best of humanity, empathy, right? Caring, love, it's only possible for us to open that and develop that part of our anatomy, our brain. When pain recedes to a certain level where caring is a manageable experience, right? You have very sensitive people and you expose them to war and they can't function anymore because they can't close their empathy down and it's too painful, right? So the more pain, the more trauma that we're exposed to, the more sociopathic, the more dissociative we must become in order to digest and navigate that energy field, right? And dinosaurs going around plucking random neighbors out of houses, it's just a bit too terrifying to become human beings. To stay reptilian, fear-based mammals, maybe, right? To stay sociopaths, maybe. But to be human beings, difficult, right? And so the extinction of the dinosaurs, paving the way for a gentler, right? Now, it's not entirely, gentle-free. There's piranhas and this and that, but it's a very different world than animals with snake brains, reptiles the size of houses, trampling around at 40, 50, 60 miles an hour, just eating anything that they want in sea and on land. It's very difficult to imagine any kind of human civilization being able to get off the ground enough to be able to combat that, right? Because you need to form partnerships. And how do you form a partnership when you don't trust because you're in so much pain and fear? Reptiles don't trust. They're paranoid, right? So it's hard to synergize. So from our perspective, if we think that human beings are better than dinosaurs, that the best of humanity is better than the best of dinosaurs, then it's a wonderful thing that a meteorite struck the Earth and wiped out billions and billions of life forms, paving the way for our existence, right? And given the damage, etc., that we are doing ecologically, with nuclear waste, with forming all kinds of synthetic chemicals, there are more than 100,000 synthetic chemicals that damage our ecology in the concentrations that we create them. So we could also go, 60 million years into the future and say that an extinction event that wiped out humanity and, and all of these things could be good from the perspective of that which followed, right? Maybe not, but certainly from the perspective of whatever life form emerged to fill in the gap that wouldn't have existed without our extinction. You could say that the extinction was a wonderful thing. It was the birth point of a new life form, right? So death and birth are very interconnected. And from life's point of view, right, as long as there is a sustainable ecology that is moving towards intelligence and complexity, that is moving towards diversity, creativity, that is self-perpetuating, life is a winner, right? As far as life is concerned, dinosaurs are a winner, human beings are a winner, right? But relative to a certain point of view, right? If we took the dinosaurs' perspective, then it's an absolute disaster. So if we step out of the human perspective, then what is good and what is bad, there's a pro and con. There's an intelligent point of view that would say that there's something good that at some point in time will come out of everything that happens. And there's something bad at some point in time from some point of view that will come out of everything that happens, right? Something good, something bad in everything from a given point of view. Because once we establish the attachment, right, to whether it's human beings or the planet, because you could envision a dynamic where we're moving towards interstellar commerce, right, of taking patterns of energy that were produced on this planet and beginning to populate the solar system. And this is a very, very beautiful thing for me and for most of us to think, thanks to visionaries such as Elon Musk and Bezos and others, that in the next 300 years, that there may be solar systems around us, that are populated, self-sustaining, that have patterns of energy. And from that perspective, to have the Earth suddenly shattered by a meteorite that was maybe 28 miles long or 1,000 miles long, a 1,000-mile meteorite hitting dead into the Earth, that's pretty much the end of the Earth for, millions, if not billions of years, if not ever, right? It could just shatter things, right? And so that would be so sad from our point of view. But what would happen over the next trillion years would be a different form of intelligence. Over the next trillion years, there's bound to be intelligent life forming somewhere, in some way. And what if it was more sustainable or more compassionate, right? Certainly different, right? So, and certainly from its point of view, it would be a wonderful thing that it got to, establish the new template out in the solar system. So we take a given point of view out of the perspective, everything is good, everything is bad. Now, when we zoom in just to our own perspective, then we can see in the abstract that every pattern of energy is good and every pattern of energy is bad within us. Every thought is good, every thought is bad. So let's look at that. Patterns of energy tend to kind of, you've got physical patterns of energy, you've got mental patterns of energy, you've got emotional patterns of energy. And we tend to label them. We use language and we say, this is a hand, right? It's a label, right? So it's a pattern of energy we call a hand, right? And so we say this is good, this is bad. How's it good? Well, it allows us to do this, it allows us to do that, it allows us to hold things, make gestures, catch a ball. It's very good. How's it bad? Well, there's always a better way, right? There's always a faster way. Like my reflexes aren't very fast, but imagine, just to make this point, that there's a hand that's 3 times faster in its instincts, in its reflexes than my hand. Well, then this hand is bad relative to that, because it's all referencing this underlying continuum of well-being, We want to feel sustainably better. We want to avoid feeling chronically worse. And what we're using to do that is technology. I have this idea that the Earth is flat. It's an idea. The Earth is flat. Okay? That's a piece of technology that allows me to navigate pretty well up until we reach the point of, global airfare and global shipping, right? It's not a good, if you're just going across land within limited surfaces, then the idea that the Earth is flat is a perfectly good technology as an idea. It's terrible technology if you want to fly a plane around the world, right? Because you'd think you'd have to turn the plane around and fly the other way and then fly that way, right? And that's not the case. You just keep flying straight and you'll eventually come all the way around. So it's not as good of a technology. It's better than nothing, right? If you said the world is a triangle, not so good. The world is flat, a workable thing on short areas of land. And now we say the world is round. That's another technology. There is a better one. There is a better one, right? And physicists are pointing to the limits of space-time and how to exit it and enter it, etc. But the world is round is also a technology. And it's the best one we have right now. And so we use it. We just cross this out and put that, right? And now that's the pattern of thinking, right? And that facilitates certain things, certain areas of well-being that we couldn't have facilitated with the last iteration of technology. All thoughts are technology. All feelings are technology. All biology is technology. All robots, computers, any synthetic thing. Every pattern of energy that is intelligently organized is a technology for achieving well-being, right? Now here's the difficult truth about evolution. In order to go from the world is flat to the world is round, the idea the world is round has to consume the space and energy of the world is flat. They can't both exist very easily. You can make space for it, like you can say, well, it looks like the world is flat and that's fine. That looks pretty flat out there and that's a good reference point. But the world is really round, right? And so, when we iterate technology, nobody's using the old Nokia flip phones anymore, right? Because the new Samsungs, the new smartphone is a better technology. It consumes the energy. The money that would have gone into the updated flip phone is now going into the time that would have gone into here is now going into here, right? And so the old technology, the old thought, the old belief system, the old religion, the old cult, the old dogma, has to be consumed in order to update. And so everything is good, everything is bad, relative to the status quo, right? If you go back in time into the 60s, then Nokia flip phones are great. They're more than great. They're the best thing around. It's hard to believe they exist. They don't exist. But if you could take a Nokia flip phone back into the 60s, or the 1500s, wow, magic. And if you could take a Samsung Note 10 in 2021, 500 years into the future, it is a piece of junk. It's like, where did you dig this thing up? Why would I bother touching and when I can make thought contact, right? This is fascinating, right? It might be good for archaeological purposes, right? My goodness. This is what they used to believe back then, right? So it's ahead of its time, it's behind its time. It's the same pattern, but every pattern of thinking, every pattern of feeling, every pattern of believing, every pattern of doing, every pattern atomically and and genetically, etc., every pattern is a technology that was organized to evolve life, to take life from where it was to the next level, right? Because life's on a journey. It's becoming more complex, more intelligent, more efficient, more diverse, more creative, more synergistic, right? Life is getting more complex, more efficient, more diverse, more efficient, more intelligent with every iteration. That's the nature of life. And so everything that exists, every pattern, every thought, every atomic structure, every idea that exists today was once or is still the best pattern to take life to the next level. Everything that exists today is or once was the best option for taking life towards greater sustainability, towards greater complexity, towards greater intelligence, towards greater diversity, right? Towards greater efficiency. That's why it exists, because it was able to consume the energy in an older form and use that energy more efficiently than the older form to create something new. That's why it exists. And it will continue to exist until it meets something. It meets an energy pattern. It encounters another technology that will consume its energy more efficiently, more intelligently than the other way around, right? Because energy patterns meet, life meets life, and life wants to grow, wants to expand, wants to evolve. And so when life needs life, meets life, when one pattern of energy meets another pattern of energy, either they synergize to create something that has not existed yet, and that serves life, or one tends to consume the other, right? One culture consumes another culture. One belief system consumes another belief system, if it yields more sustainable well-being in human terms than the other one, right? There was a time when the dominant belief system was you're bad, you're a sinner, and you're going to be damned, and you're going to go to hell, and you should fear God so that he wouldn't punish you and burn you alive for eternity. And that kind of worked. Got us to a certain point, but then these other people came along saying that, positive thinking and creativity and it's all good. And they had a lot more fun. They weren't so scared and they were more creative, right? They invented the internet and this and that. They did all these things. And people began joining that technology, that idea. It's like, that's more fun. And it's less energy. I don't have to wonder about being punished by a terrifying sociopath called God, and I can focus on joyfully living, right? That's more fun. And focus on gratitude is more fun than complaining endlessly, right? So there's more people interested in that, right? But what works to create more sustainable well-being with more ease, with less energy consumption, with more ease, that tends to iterate into and consume the energy, the time, money, and natural resources of human beings. So every thought system you have, every guilt, every fear, every pattern of energy that you hold is a technology that was once useful, that may still be useful, and that will become the impediment of where you are going if you continue to evolve, right? Because if you continue to evolve, the very thing that helped you get to the point you are now is going to get in the way of you becoming who you're going to become. It's going to get in the way of going where you're going to be going. Because you go crazy saying, I'm a bad person, I'm a good person, I'm a whatever person. Two conflicting systems. If you hold two conflicting systems and someone else holds one effective system, then you're going to be tied up in the conflicting tug of war, and they're going to sail right past you. And their offspring, and both mentally and logistically, their offspring is also going to sail past you. Because it's more efficient to have conviction of one thing and follow it wholeheartedly, and it's a good, meaning it's an effective conviction, than it is to say, I should go for it, but I don't want to go for it, I might fail. I should go for it, but I don't want to go for it, I might fail, right? That sense of hesitation, of conflict, of resistance inside is not as efficient as excitement, enthusiasm, and confidence, right? But there was a time when that hesitancy served you and served the people carrying it, right? When other people were rushing into, the first wave of crypto or whatever it was, right? You were hesitant and you didn't lose 80% of your capital, right? So there is always a time when every pattern, every technology is superior to other technologies, both including fear. Like, you go first into the deep oceans. I'm going to wait and see how many of you come back. Then I'll go, right? So hesitancy is a technology. Doubt is a technology. Now, doubt keeps you alive when the first ignorant people go into the unknown, because ignorant people going into the unknown often end up dead, poor, bankrupt, traumatized, right? So doubt kept you and the people occupying and embodying that technology kept you alive, watching. Let's see what happens. However, right, the first wave goes in, they get blown up, they die. The second wave goes in, half of them come back alive. The third wave goes in, and they've figured out most of the bugs, 99% of them come back alive. Then the fourth wave, 99.9% of them come back alive, A. And B, what they retrieve in that journey into the unknown is so valuable that it gives them an edge. They become more intelligent. Now, things have switched. Now the people who enthusiastically go into that, 99% of them, 0.9, come back with gifts, with abundance that those who don't go in don't get. And you've still got doubt. Why? Why have you got doubt? Because it worked for you, right? Thank goodness I had doubt. I watched my friend die. I watched this. I watched that. Thank goodness I had doubt. Doubt is what keeps me alive until it doesn't, until it kills you. Because when the majority of people are now diving in to the new technology, to the new world, and receiving the edge that that provides. Now, your doubt is giving you a 40% disadvantage because they've got a 40% edge. They're now using the internet. They're now using smartphones. They're now using this, and you've still got doubt, right? Because the doubt kept you alive. It's the same doubt. At one point, it kept you alive relative to the first adventurers. And then, it was so-so. It was still keeping you alive, but, statistically speaking, it was kind of even. And now the same doubt in this new environment is guaranteeing that you're in a distinct minority that is not receiving the benefit of that adventure, of that new technology, right? And so all that's changed is the outer environment and a little bit of time. You had doubt the whole time. Now, doubt has never felt good. Doubting doesn't feel good, so you've got then a negative of that, right? But it's better to not feel good and be alive than it is to feel great just before you die, right? Going in there, I'm sure I can tame that tiger, no problem. I'm confident. Oh, I'm dead, right? It's a little doubt, watching, learning, etc. would be useful. So every single technology, every thought, every belief system, every cult, every culture, cars, gasoline, soda, it's all a technology. It's all a form. And in some situations, it is the best available path, the best available technology to propel you from a lower level of well-being to a higher level. From that level to that level, right? And it's an endless continuum. It never stops. Wherever you are, there's always more growth. There's always more well-being. And so the technologies, the thoughts that you hold today, the beliefs that you hold today, the location where you live today, the way you do things today, there will come a time, maybe in your lifetime, maybe it's already come, maybe 500 years in the future, when that is absolutely absurd relative to the new technology. And that's how everything is good, everything is bad, that we're hanging on to in our identity. Our identity is the things that our I attaches to. That's me. That's my thought. That's my feeling. That's my body. Why? Because I'm attached to it. If there's no I there to identify, to clench onto that pattern, there's no identity. An identity is a pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being in a given environment that has developed in a given environment as the best thing that I, that ego knows to facilitate its well-being, its survival, its security, its love and belonging. Every single thought that we think, every single thing that we do, everything that we don't do, everything that we feel, it's all technology that was given to us, rightly or wrongly, as the way forward. This is what we do in this family. We're not a quitter. Well, there's some people still working on the old version of the web. It was supposed to be like this rather than HTTP and this and that. It was supposed to be that, right? They're never quitting, right? They've lost their house, they've lost this, but they're not quitting, right? And that's what we are. We never quit. Whatever we do, we never quit, right? Some people still driving horse and buggies, right? Why mess with a good thing, right? That's the principle. If it's working, worked in the past, don't change it, is the belief. And that belief is better in some environments than others. That's why it's alive. That's why it's being given to you, right? You arrived in a new continent, and some people said, let's try all the food. Oh, I'm dead. You're dead, right? And others said, no, we stick to the, we watch and we stick to the, the crappy, food that they brought over in the ships, right? We don't try anything new, right? And they died, and they died, and they died, and your family survived because you didn't try anything new. Or in another environment, there wasn't anything old to try, and so you had to try something new, and the only people who tried something new, some of them lived, and those are the ones that passed down the pattern, try something new, right? So every technology is a step forward in a given situation. And every technology, every thought, every language, every idea, every meme, every paradigm is damaging, is limiting, is an obstacle in another situation relative to the alternative, right? It's often relative to the status quo, which is what the majority of people are doing, right? Because how cults function is pace setters, leaders, test and iterate things, and when they prove it safe, then everyone copies them. And then everyone else just copies the majority, and it works better than nothing, right? And you don't have to think. It's very efficient. You don't have to think. You don't have to feel. Just copy what other people are doing. And most of the time, it at least keeps you alive, right? But there will come a time when what everyone's doing will kill you, will hold you back, right? And that's how everything is good, everything is bad from a given point of view in a given setting. So one of the questions is, what do you do, right? You've got this technology, you've got this belief. Humility is the way forward. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means you look to the experts of the day and you say, is this a reasonable thing? And if they say no, you listen to them. You bow down to the experts. Well, Orville Wright and Wilbur Wright didn't bow to the experts. They were fools who believed that flying was possible, right? Every technology, before it is adopted and seen as obvious, was once the domains of lunatics and fools. So if you're going to always bow to the experts, you're guaranteed to miss the next big thing, right? But as long as there's not a huge next big thing right there, and, because there's also a lot of next big things that go bankrupt, right? So it depends, right? But if you had the chance to invest in Google, which was a crazy idea, right? They went around, Larry Page and Brin went around and said, search is going to be a big thing. No, they're nuts. Yahoo wasn't making any money in search. They were just doing crappy ads and stuff. No one was doing that. Nobody wanted to invest, right? And so if you looked at the experts said, that's ridiculous. Just two kids, idiots, don't invest the family fortune into Google, right? So that particular meme, you listen to the experts, and this is how pain is often the way that intergenerational technology changes, right? You've been a good Christian scientist, and then you watched your favorite little girl die, and all your friends told you you could have kept her alive if you'd just given her, an antibiotic. Then you have another child, and they die as well. And again, you could have. And the third child, you're kind of tired of killing your children, tired of watching the Lord not grant. So you give the third child an antibiotic, and they live. And that's the pivot point. That's it, right? I'm sick of this. We are never believing another religion. We're trusting in science. So there's often a big pivot point around pain and failure. But it's also, right, now you've got a new pivot point that is limited, right? It's the all or nothing thing, right? Because every technology works in a certain situation, right? If you try repeatedly to fly a plane underwater and it never works, and you say, that's it, we're done with planes. That works fine until you start seeing planes take off successfully on land. And then you vowed never to use planes, right? So, it's easy to have absolutes. With ideas and technology always starts off simple, black and white. God is right, God doesn't exist. That's very simple, right? But then you start saying, well, maybe a God defined like this does exist, and a God defined like that doesn't exist. It's more complex. And maybe prayer doesn't take the place of antibiotics, but it lifts depression, right? To hear that everyone wants you to live, your sense of love and belonging goes up, your white blood cells count goes up, your excitement to live goes up, and with the antibiotics, you feel welcome and you have a will to live. And so it's not black and white. And so you start having more complex things. I believe in antibiotics and prayer and goodwill and wanting to live and the placebo effect and this, right? And then you start to hit certain problems from multiple angles with multiple technology, and you have a synergy. You get a brilliant result. Together, this, and this cracked the code, and now we've broken through the barrier, right? Now we know how to cure AIDS. Now we know how to do this, right? And so it's not simple, right? So simple ideas get replaced with complex ideas because reality is far more complex than the conscious mind is capable of comprehending. There is more subatomic activity in this thumb than you can figure out in a lifetime if you actually want to be present for all the activity. In an abstraction, you can say symbolically that this subatomic particle is, moving at 29 million times the speed of sound. That's easy to say. But you can't watch even a single subatomic particle move that fast because it's faster than you can think. That's just one of trillions of subatomic particles, right? And so reality is vastly more complex than you can possibly comprehend. But moving towards, in the direction of comprehension, a more complex model of reality generally replaces a simplistic model, right? So, complex technology consumes simple technology. Cars are more complex today than they were when the Model T was invented, right? That's always the case, right? There's a continual increase in complexity, particularly if we want a successful model of reality, because reality we already know is more complex than we can possibly catch up to. Now, what do we do when our identity, our I, identifies with a pattern of thought that is in the way, right? The first thing to understand is that at one time in the family lineage, it was not. It was the thing that kept the family alive, and that's why it's passed down as sacred. This is what we do because this is what, we are a secretive family. Why? Why are all these secrets? Well, back in the Holocaust, if we hadn't successfully lied to the Germans and kept the secret of our identity, we would have all been dead. You would have been dead. I would have been dead. The only reason this family survived is secrecy and lies. You get it? I would be dead. Your father would never have been born. You would never have been born. The whole family lineage rested on the ability to lie successfully, right? And so that's a pretty deep print, that gets some attention, right? Because the primary need of every human being is to survive. And so that which helps the family survive gets a deep imprint. Now you fast forward, 50, 100 years, and now someone is trying to understand your genealogy, your genetics, to help you fix a medical problem. But you believe the best way to keep alive is to keep secrets from your doctor. Now it's perfectly understandable, if the family's survival depends on secrecy. Don't disclose everything to strangers. That's what gets passed down. Well, as soon as you try to tell the doctor, your family rebels, right? Or you feel like you're going to die, right? Now, the very thing that kept your family alive in that context may kill you in this context. Because if the doctor does know what they're doing, and if they do really want to help, and they don't have a full picture because you're keeping secrets, because that's what you believe, you may die for the same reason that you once lived as a family, because you kept a secret, right? And so the question is, what do you do with patterns of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being that were once saviors, and you're now beginning to think, this isn't such a good idea? Why do I always do that? Someone gives me a compliment and then I insult them. Or someone's nice to me and I think they're not worth it. Someone's mean to me and I suddenly think that they're the most amazing, partner I could have, right? Someone looks down on me and I look up to them. Someone looks up to me and I look down on them, It's not working, right? The old technology that once had a benefit is no longer working. But the ego is attached to the pattern. The ego defines itself as the pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being. And the traumatized ego fears change and potential death above all else. And so any changes to the pattern, to the identity, are met with all kinds of anxiety, all kinds of sabotage. And so how do you, when you've figured out that there's a technology, there's a part of your identity that once helped and is now damaging, now blocking you, how do you get there? How do you transform that technology? So the first thing is to understand that what you're trying to transform once saved your life, that you probably wouldn't be here without it, that every pattern of energy had a time and a place when it was the next best thing. Some patterns are 1,000 years old, when they were brilliant and brand new. Some patterns are 1,000,000 years old. But every biological impulse, every brain, every program, every technology, every thought, every paradigm of an eye for an eye, that at one time, that was cutting-edge technology that helped prevent, sociopathic behavior towards your family. At one time, there was a time in certain situations where that seemed to work. So the first thing to understand is that it's working for you. All of these patterns are hanging on because they believe that they're the key to life, that they're the winner, that they're going to help you win. So when you've got a voice in yourself saying, don't tell the truth, don't let anyone in, you got to recognize that that part of you is trying to keep you alive. So you have to honor and understand it, right? Because you've got a gateway, right? The old technology has got you in a prison. We're not changing. We're not doing anything different. This is the way it is. And you've got to get outside the door. So you have to honor it. You have to understand it. You have to demonstrate and talk with it, right? I get that we would have been dead if we had said that we were Jewish. I get that. I get that lying was absolutely key to our survival, that lovely little grandchild would be dead right now, the one you care about so much, if it wasn't for that lie. Lying back then was good. Now, you've got to honor that. You've also got to honor a certain amount of humility. If you're changing something, you can't figure out. Reality is more complex than you imagine. So you have to also acknowledge you could be wrong. You also have to try and learn, right? You don't dismiss the past, you learn from it and take the gifts. Like some people are sociopathic. If you say, nah, nobody's sociopathic these days, that part of you knows you're lying. There are sociopaths these days. They may not be as overt. They may require a World War III for their cruelty to come out and fully blossom. But human beings are capable of profound cruelty. And so you have to learn discernment. You have to show the part of yourself that is saying, no, we should just not trust anyone. That you've got a better plan. Like, here's how we know how to trust someone. Let's do a test. Let's do paper trading, right? Paper trading, you're going to invest in something speculative. So if you're sure it's a winner, right? You've read the book on commodity trading, whatever. So it's a winner, right? So you've got to test your theory. Like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to sell now, I'm going to do this, and you got to see if you're actually right. So you can test the new technology. Like, I would have trusted this person. Let's wait a year and see if they're trustworthy. You can test the new technology relative to the old one and take it along for the ride. Like, say, look, we're all in this together. We want to live. Thank you for keeping me alive in Nazi Germany. Thank you for keeping me alive in this situation. Thank you for not bankrupting me. Thank you so much for the benefits of secrecy. But there's also a cost to secrecy. You can't love and keep secrets, right? If you hide who you are, the person who is being loved isn't you. It's who you're pretending to be. You can't really be loved if you're living a lie, right? And so there's a cost to this. So you have to honor, you have to love, and you have to thank, and you have to understand the context. And if you can love, if you can honor, if you can thank, and if you can hold the responsibility, that part of you is so scared of dying, of killing their family. And that's in the body, saying, don't let go of this. Don't let anyone know. We could all die. You've got to thank that part. You've got to meet that part. You've got to understand that part in your body. And you have to say, I think we've got a better situation. And back in your time, fascism and this and that, the other, then that's a really good policy. But I'm in a different country now, and I'm in a different time period now. And that's not happening anymore. Do you understand? So now this same thing is helping isolate this family because we don't let anyone in. We don't invite friends over. So now we're isolated, right? Do you have to understand and honor? Because one thing that is clear, if you're cursing and dismissing and brushing aside, if you're arrogant with what kept you alive as a family, it doesn't trust you for good reason. You're too dumb. You're too arrogant to make a good decision. Arrogance is not trustworthy. If you don't slow down and actually see how and why these systems worked, you're not trustworthy to develop a new technology that works even better. Because you can't develop a technology that works better until you understand the problem that the old technology solved and its benefits as well as its costs. That's when you're in the position to make a sales pitch to the part of you that wants your well-being and is attached to that technology because it worked. Thank you for keeping me alive. Thank you for solving this wonderful problem. But I want you to understand that in this reality, it's causing major problems that weren't an issue back then, but are now. And in this situation, that's not as necessary. So honoring, loving, seeing, understanding, and empathizing is how to get through the gate. Because when you hate, when you dissociate, when you're arrogant with yourself that kept you alive, with your protector objectors is a good psychological term for those parts in every psyche. In the family psyche, in the cult psyche, in the individual psyche, right? Because there's a cult psyche, right? The British, we rule the waves and all this stuff. When the Navy is the thing that is, propelling your nation forward, and you know that, and someone says, well, let's try these things called planes, you've got a lot of work to do, or you just stay with boats, right? And then you lose, right? In the Second World War, Britain lost its empire, right? There was confusion, that there was a lack of humility and understanding of all that was going on. And there was also a tremendous desire to avoid another war after World War I. So the Navy was starved of capital, right? And then failed. And that, and then too much reliance on the Navy and not enough on planes. Is it good? Is it bad that Britain is no longer an empire? Right? It depends on your perspective, right? But these moments of change, right, where the old has a protocol of we always do this, right? In the Lord of the Rings, the Meadowlands, whatever they were, Airmore, I think it was, and the horsemen, right, of the Meadowlands, they always went to Helm's Deep when there was a crisis, because the crisis was always solved by going to Helm's Deep. And so that's what they did, right? But this time there was gunpowder set inside Helm's Deep. And this time Helm's Deep failed, was a trap, right? But you go back to the old resource. You go back to drinking. You go back to shutting down. You go back to numbing your feelings. You go back to lying. You go back to secrets and illicit affairs. You go back to what worked before until it doesn't, right? And until it's so painful that it doesn't, you try something new and then that fails. And you try something new and that fails. Then when you find something that actually works, you cling to it for dear life and you keep doing that until it fails. That's the kind of unconscious reactive cycle. But if you want to consciously iterate, you've got to consciously understand what was going on in these different transition points. Honor and appreciate, bow down, thank the parts of you that kept you alive with alcohol or with whatever it was. And now we're trying this approach, right? That used to be the thing, but now we're trying this. We can go back to that if this doesn't work, but let's give this a try. I get it, and thank you for keeping me alive, right? So honor, love, respect, empathy, understanding, they're critical for this conscious form of iteration. Every technology, every thought, every belief, every paradigm is a step forward relative to something else and is a step backward relative to something else. The journey towards sustainable well-being is infinite. Wherever we are is in the way of what will be what will be is in the way of what will be after that, right? And the past is in the way of what, but it's also it's the path and the way, right? It's like stepping stones. This stepping stone is backward to that stepping stone. This stepping stone is forward to this stepping stone. This stepping stone, once you take it, now this one is backward and that one's backward. From here, they're both forward. It's all relative. Everything is a stepping stone. Every technology is a stepping stone. And it's all about figuring out when it's time to take the next step, when it's time to develop the next pattern of energy.